in a sense, she was, in the way that's been described, an activist, though I guess I never thought of her that way when I knew her. But she was so active in her bridge building with America to introduce Indian culture to America. If she could be here to see this, she would not feel deserving of this. She'd be very embarrassed. She'd say, "What's all this fuss?" But, I'm just so touched to see Berkeley recognize her and welcome her in this way to their city, and Berkeley was fearful and hostile toward strangers and, who didn't look like them with different customs. She was married very young, like about 11, 12 years old. And her husband, VAISHNO, had always been an activist in India, even when they were first married. So, for example, he was very principled. He wore things like, he only wore homespun. He would boycott British cloth and British sugar. So she steps off the steamer, and it looks like a reporter noticed her, sees this woman in a nose ring and a sari, and says, she writes an article about Kala, saying, "This is the first Indian woman to come here in over 10 years. She fell in love with San Francisco. She, I think, had not even seen an ocean before she left on this trip. And arriving in San Francisco, she just loved the whole climate of it, the fog, the cool breezes, a beach to walk on. Throughout her whole life, she would just, throw off her shoes. If there was a beach to walk on, she was on it, walking on it. They pull up to the house with their moving vans full of furniture, and the neighbors have basically, once they see them, I guess, pulling up, they realize they're Indian. And as far as I know from her story, these neighbors were English. And so they must have thought, what? How can these people be coming to live next door to us? How can this happen? They have no standing, no right in this community. These are, they're Indians. And so they prevented them from moving in. And Kala was scared and shocked, and she didn't, want to stay there. She told her husband, we've got to go. We'll find another place. At that point, I think they just felt like, wow, we are on our way. We are just as American as anyone. That decision, it turned out, affected not just them, but my grandfather, and a host of other Indians who had been naturalized as well. His citizenship and others like him was stripped. That was the last straw, and that's when he decided to end his life. And that was just really terribly devastating for Kala. Something that she always had a hard time talking about, even after when I knew her. For one thing, she always called him Mr. Bagai. She never called him VAISHNO, or he was, I think, fondly known to his friends, VD. You know, the history of these first few immigrant families is painful, but it needs to be recognized. It needs to be reckoned with so that we can be informed by our past, and we can learn from it. Right now, young women from immigrant families who say walk down that part of Shattuck, they walk down the street, and now they see Culla's name, and they learn who she is and who she was, that they'll feel more understood themselves. They'll feel less alien, and they'll feel welcomed.